Hello, and welcome to the Community IT Innovators Technology Topics Podcast, where we discuss nonprofit technology, cybersecurity, tech project implementation, strategic planning, and nonprofit IT careers. Find us at communityit.com.
Thank you for joining Community IT for this podcast, Part 1. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits. Listen for Part 2 in your podcast feed.
Welcome, everyone, to the Community IT Innovators Kaleidoscope panel for NTC 22. We're so happy that you decided to join us for today's webinar on diverse perspectives on thriving in nonprofit tech careers. I'm excited to be partnering with three amazing women in technology today from three different career paths who will have a conversation about building supports and finding environments where traditionally underrepresented communities can thrive in our sector. You'll be seeing them once we're done with these slides in just a moment. My name is Sarah Wolf. I'm the sales manager at Community IT, and I will be moderating today's conversation. This is the first time I'm presenting at NTC, so I'm very excited. I use she, her pronouns and am a queer, cis, mixed Colombian American woman living in DC on Anacostan land. Today I have dark red hair and I'm wearing a white blouse with a black collar. My journey here has not been linear. I graduated with a BA in biology the summer of 2008 and eventually found my way into education. I spent most of the next decade teaching various science classes and to middle school and high school students. And after years of denial, I admitted I was burnt out. At a loss of where to go and what to do next, a friend pointed me in the direction of Community IT. I joined in 2018 as the account associate, and since then I've helped found the Community IT Black Lives Matter working group and moved into sales management September of last year. Before we begin, if you're not familiar with Community IT, I just wanted to share a little bit about us. We are 100% employee-owned, managed service provider. We provide outsourced IT support, and we work exclusively with nonprofit organizations, and our mission is to help nonprofits accomplish your missions through the effective use of technology. We have about 40 staff, and we started in the metropolitan DC area over 20 years ago and now serve nonprofits across the US. We're technology experts, and we are consistently named a top 500 managed service provider by Channel Futures. And that's an honor that we received again in 2021. Now that that's over and done with, I'm sure you are much more excited to hear about our learning objectives for today. My goal is for our audience to be able to use anecdotes from our panelists' personal experiences to describe organizational practices and individual behaviors that can contribute to a safer, more equitable, and more inclusive nonprofit tech industry, and identify organizational structures and individual behaviors that can create obstacles to a safer and more equitable and more inclusive nonprofit tech industry. I want to say from the outset that in our prep meetings, we've been very clear that if somebody knew exactly how to create inclusive workspaces, we'd all be doing it already. These women don't have all the answers, and during today's panel, they are interested in exploring where they personally have come from and potentially where the sector can go. Over the past few years, Community IT has been more explicitly deliberate in our attempts to create an equitable and inclusive environment for our employee owners. We haven't always gotten it right, but we are trying our best and learning from our successes and failures. One of the things I've taken away from the work I've done is having open and honest conversations can often be the best way to learn and grow as an individual and as part of a larger org. I'm not an expert in equity and inclusion, but I am excited to learn. Some of the things you hear today may be new to you or things that you've heard many times before. There's going to be overlap with a bunch of different panels, but we're hoping that this is going to be a continuation and or a start for a longer conversation. We encourage you to submit questions and comments through the chat today. We do have a couple polls that we're going to be throwing up and asking for response in the chat. We also have somebody moderating to make sure we see all of your questions. There is a bit of a lag. Since this is such a big topic, we know we can't cover everything, but you can contact me or the panelists after the webinar for a follow-up and suggestions for another panel or next panel on diversity and inclusion in nonprofits and nonprofit tech. On that note, I would love to introduce our panelists. We wanted to gather people with a wide range of experiences since nonprofit tech is such a wide field. And I'm hoping that Sandy and everyone will join us. Excellent. So I know I've been talking nonstop for a moment, but I'd like to introduce Stephanie Cruz. She is the CEO and founder of DigiGeeks and has over 15 years of experience as a strategic communications professional. She's mobilized millions of individuals to action across national social movements, including the Women's March, Families Belong Together, and the March for Our Lives. She was one of the first digital strategists on Capitol Hill, and most recently, Steph served as the Vice President for Marketing and Digital at America's Promise Alliance. We also have Angela Kim. She is the Director of Finance and Operations at Academy of Hope in DC for the past 2 years and has had over 13 years of experience in the private and nonprofit sectors. Angela is a graduate from Columbia University of Nonprofit Management Master's Program and has served on multiple nonprofit boards. Sandy Martins serves as the Director of Information Technology at Mentor, and she has over 16 years of diverse expertise in the technology sector, including network technology, health IT, software and application development, and managing complex technology-driven projects. Sandy holds a bachelor's degree in computer graphics and new media from Johnson & Wales and will be completing her MBA program at Providence College in 2023. Steph, would you please start us off on sharing your story?
Sure. So Stephanie Cruz, so excited to be here with you all. As Sarah shared, a digital communications specialist, have been doing this work for about 15 years. I started, I'm originally from New York and currently live in Arlington, Virginia. I started actually a poli-sci major. So Sarah, interesting how what we study versus what we end up doing. And I ended up working on Capitol Hill about 2006 before social and digital was a big thing within the political world and really helped members of Congress understand why they needed to be on Facebook and Twitter, and now I completely regret it. But here we are, but really helping people to understand the importance of online and digital tools to bridge communities together and help to close divides. After graduating from Pepperdine in California, I went to the Hill. I was on the Hill for about 7 to 10 years. When I transitioned to the nonprofit sector, I worked at AARP within their Public Policy Institute for about 2 years, and then transitioned to America's Promise, where I helped to oversee their digital and marketing work. And super excited to be here with you all and to chat more about our journeys.
All right, Angela, would you like to step in next?
Sure. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angela Kim. I'm a 1.5 generation Korean American. I grew up in Maryland and currently also reside in Arlington, Virginia. Apparently it's a hot spot. I today have dark brown hair and I'm wearing a light blue shirt. I don't think anybody's career is linear, not that I know of. For me, I spent the majority of my career in the corporate world, doing sales operations with global tech firms, at VMware doing cloud computing, and MicroStrategy, a business intelligence company. I've been surrounded by a lot of smart tech folks, and I enjoyed having robust systems and resources and manpower and technology and funding all at your fingertips. And at the same time, I spent a great deal of time volunteering after hours at Boys and Girls Clubs in the greater Washington, D.C. area that I absolutely fell in love with. And with that time, I started and created a junior board, and then served on the board for a number of years to help create impact for the lovely kids that are there. And that's where I really, truly developed my passion for the nonprofit mission-based work. And I came to a really pivotal decision point where I was finding myself much more inspired and motivated and happy to do the more nonprofit mission work after hours than selling more widgets at a certain point. So I came to a decision point where I had to decide, do I volunteer my time after hours? Do I donate a lot of money, or do I donate my skills and strengths directly to a nonprofit on a day-to-day basis? So I made that decision to move to the nonprofit side full time, and went through a master's program for nonprofit management, which was incredibly amazing. And in 2019, I joined Academy of Hope Adult Public Charter School in 2019 and oversee operations and finance. It's a public charter school that serves communities in Northeast and Southeast in DC. And we really focus on providing high quality adult education and services to give folks a second chance at they're earning their high school diploma and career advancement. And so now the work is much more enjoyable, and I can see where all of my hard work is going to. So excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandy?
Awesome. Great afternoon, everyone. For any visually impaired folks, I am a Cape Verdean woman with curly hair wearing a cream sweater. My name is Sandy Martins. I was born and raised in Boston, currently living here in Rhode Island. I've always had a fascination with technology. I enjoy how dynamic it is. I love the power of connection it has when bringing people and processes together, and the many problems and efficiencies that it solves. Similarly, that's also how I feel about project management. I've had the pleasure to begin my career within the tech industry as a project manager. In the beginning, I was really eager to learn more about it, so I joined a professional development organization by the name of OSPMI, or Ocean State Project Management Institute. After a couple of years, I was nominated to join the board and served 2 consecutive terms as the VP of Admin. And given the organization's history, it was definitely a milestone being the youngest board member as well as the only Black woman who has served in that role. After 6 years, I officially stepped down in 2016 to focus on other things like managing many projects. And in the last 16 years, I've managed projects related to networking technology, unified communications, health IT, software application, and now as a director of IT at Mentor, I am strategically moving the organization towards efficiencies of project management and driving impactful change through technology. Now, as much as I enjoy technology, I also had to learn how to disconnect from it and create this healthy balance for my mental space. So that involves journaling, spending time with my family, being a plant mom, traveling when I can, or even being outdoors. And when I'm not doing any of that, as Sarah mentioned, I am pursuing my MBA, on track to graduate May of next year. I strongly believe there's with the passion that you have, it's essential to really drive that through engagement, continuous improvement, and inspiring others that are around you. So that's a little bit about me. I'm certainly excited to be here. And I appreciate you having me and these wonderful ladies here to talk about a very thought-provoking conversation.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I'm really excited to be doing this. One of the things that we wanted to do was, get an idea of who we're talking with. So if you would feel comfortable, people in the audience, please let us know how you identify. I had a poll, but I didn't realize that we can't do polls. So I would just, whatever you feel comfortable sharing, that would be greatly appreciated. We do want to make sure that we're talking about what matters to you. So while we're having that, I wanted to ask Sandy and Angela, how was the experience transitioning into the nonprofit space, both positive and negative?
Yeah, I can take that question first. For me, just reflecting about my transition and comparing the two worlds, I think the reason why I was so excited about this position and having the opportunity to lead the organization forward in the technology space was I really brought a lot of the lessons learned from being in the corporate sector as always a business user and working really, really closely with all the business analysts and engineers that were extremely smart and could literally create whatever we needed and wanted. But that's really where I learned about the basics of data analytics, data hygiene, change management, user adoption, system migrations, dashboards and reporting and analytics, and just being ultimately very data driven to learn how technology and data can really help make an organization and leadership to make better business decisions. And I always say this, my biggest lesson was always make friends with the IT folks. You always need to be on their good side. Always, always, always. And then in contrast, moving into the nonprofit sector, I have been absolutely just blown away by the drive and motivation that the nonprofit folks and staff really carry day to day when it gets really hard and the work is overwhelming, especially through this pandemic and all the things that have happened in the world in the past couple of years. The drive and the commitment to the purpose and the mission has been incredibly amazing to see in action. The commitment to family and passion, and just being surrounded by truly talented and brilliant people that are just willing to collaborate and just to create change and do good for the world and your communities. I think what has been starkly, I guess, a negative aspects is it's been definitely a change and something that I had to get used to in terms of the speed and the pace that things move. The difference in the amount of resources, time, the manpower available, or just the head count, literally, and sometimes having people understanding the value that technology can bring to an organization to make work more efficient and getting out of that, this is how we've always done it. And sometimes that just helping to educate people about there's technology sometimes to help this make it easier and more efficient and to save us more time. So that's been something that I've seen and had to learn. But I'm really happy to be in the nonprofit world and to bring all the lessons learned that I've had into this space for this organization.
As mentioned, I work for Mentor, who exists to expand the mentoring movement by developing and disseminating high quality research and evidence-based practices across the US and Canada. Coming from a background strictly in corporate and moving on to nonprofit, allowed me to experience what it felt like to work with a diverse group of people. A research that I read recently mentioned that there's about 70% of white male that make up the tech industry. So seeing that shift at my organization has truly impacted my experience, definitely in a positive way. I work with many amazing women of color, men of color at Mentor. I also have the pleasure of working closely with the diverse tech team. Shout out to the in-source services tech team who supports us and really support the IT strategic vision that we put in place. Mentor, however, is a smaller organization in size, so you may have people wearing multiple hats. And there's also challenges, and I think Angela alluded to it as well, with technology and the change that it can bring. So I'm getting a really good learned lesson right now on the importance of like human behavior, change management, but I'm certainly fortunate to be in this role where I'm learning to approach this area with more grace and developing creative ways to influence staff's comfort level with new or improved technology and processes.
Oh, awesome, thank you. Steph, since you sort of spent most of your life in government and then working with nonprofits, how have you navigated working with companies and in organizations that maybe, while diverse on paper, did not create a safe and inclusive space for you?
Thank you, Sarah. I think this is an interesting part of our journeys because it's different, right, at every organization that you are, because all organizations and businesses are sort of on a spectrum of how well they are helping to create safe and inclusive spaces. As you said, Sarah, if we all knew exactly how to do it, then everyone ideally would be doing it. I think for myself, I found myself in some pretty difficult situations actually within the nonprofit sector, in spaces that were predominantly white or predominantly male, where I felt that my ideas weren't being heard. I felt like I was constantly fighting, which is a weird thing. I don't know if I'm the only one who feels like or has felt like you had to fight to do your job, in terms of being questioned, or not really feeling like folks believed in what I had to say. And there's a disconnect, right? Like if you hear the amazing accomplishments of the women on this panel, it's like, you're incredible, you've done incredible things, you obviously know incredible things. And then all of a sudden you're sitting at a conference room table and you're like, am I crazy? Like, no, I really know what I'm talking about. But yet you find yourself in situations where you're not really being made to feel like your ideas have value, like they are really being heard. And in those kind of situations, I think it took me really getting to a breaking point where I had to decide for myself the impact that environments that weren't safe and inclusive were having on my mental health, how they were impacting my family life, how they were impacting my career. And I kind of came to a breaking point and decided that I had to find my voice. That if people weren't going to create space for me and create space for my voice, I needed to create it for myself, and I needed to be willing to speak up for myself. And that was hard. You come up against a lot of resistance, but I had to advocate for what I felt was right. It was my way of pushing from within, to create a more inclusive environment for others as well. And there were some successes, and there were places where you weren't successful, right? So there are organizations that are open to that type of feedback and are willing to make changes, and organizations or individuals in leadership positions that don't want to hear it. And when I came up against really difficult situations or people in positions of leadership that were unwilling to commit to creating safer and more inclusive environments, I voted with my feet and I left. Which I think it seems like it's an easy thing, but it's actually not. It took me quite a bit of time to realize that I had agency and that I could leave and remove myself from situations or work environments that weren't committed to creating safe and inclusive spaces. So I did eventually start my own consulting firm 3 years ago. We are the DigiGeeks Collective. We are a group of digital and communications consulting strategists that work on various projects specifically within the nonprofit sector. And I am so committed to creating the type of space that I honestly never found within the workforce or the nonprofit sector, like a space where people can be heard, a place where people feel validated and valued. It's interesting just saying it out loud because it feels like it should be common sense, but it's not. So that's been my experience and how I've navigated some of those difficult situations.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, it's really frustrating to know that is not a unique experience. Dovetailing off of that, I'd love for anybody in the audience to let us know, are you somebody who is in leadership? Are you in management? So that you can, influence hiring and internal culture? Are you a staffer who's interested in learning what you can do at your level? Or are you job seeking? I know that, Steph is a CEO and founder, Angela's, in management and a director, and as is Sandy. I wanted to, ask Steph, if you could expand a little bit more and dig in to what you were talking about, what kinds of power dynamics and organizational structures make a good space for diverse and inclusive work?
Yeah, I think I spoke a little bit about voice, right, and listening. I think part of it is making sure that you are truly creating an open space where you're willing to listen. And I think the power dynamic that's really important to me is the ability to share power, right? So if we're changing dynamics at the top that are contributing to environments that are not safe and not inclusive, that means you have to be willing to give something up to hear and understand that maybe you're getting something wrong, and share power with individuals within your organization at every level, from junior, mid to senior level, to take in inputs to understand how you can help to change your culture, your environment, and your structure to become a more inclusive and safer space. And there's something I think that's really important from a leadership and power dynamics as well, around your expectations around what quality leadership is, right? So I talk about quiet leadership, and the idea that inclusive, we're talking about, it's not just race, right? There's so many different ways to create safe and inclusive environments. That also means that someone who sits in a room, in a conference room, might take longer to process information. Is not necessarily the person who always shows up to speak at the first time. It doesn't mean they're not a leader. It doesn't mean that they don't have a lot to contribute, but also understanding from a power dynamic, how are we creating space for all different types of leadership levels, for all types of different ways that folks process information, how they share information. I think this expectation that we all fit within a box, or we all have to check all of these boxes to fit, it's not safe, it's not welcoming. And I think it's really a matter of leadership taking a step back, being able to examine how willing they are to hear the difficult feedback, and to have a courageous conversation that involves saying, okay, I don't have all the answers, and I'm willing to take your inputs and create actual change in how we approach things and how we lead. And again, it feels easier said than done, because otherwise we wouldn't be having this panel conversation. But I don't think it's as done as often as it should be.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining Community IT for this podcast, Part 1. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits. Listen for Part 2 in your podcast feed.
Community IT does these free webinars and podcasts for our community, and we love sharing our knowledge and experience. If you have more questions or are having trouble with your IT at your nonprofit, please get in touch with us on our website, www.communityit.com, so we can start a conversation or schedule an assessment. Downloading any of our free resources there will get you signed up for our webinar reminders, and you can attend our next webinar in real time and ask our experts your own questions. If you love podcasts, please subscribe and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits.